We're here for the second half of our presentations for day 2. They will include Emergency Management Agency, and then we will go on to Technology Services. Emergency Management is number 22 on your booklet. Now we will have Director Dan Morgan come up and present the Emergency Management Agency FY23 budget.
Can I just say, Director Lewis, that I appreciate you telling us which tab it's
Absolutely.
under.
Ditto.
All right. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And we'll be going over 3 different budgets. The emergency management encompasses 911, EMA, and animal services. So if we would go to, thank you. I'm not going to read all of this. I just want to point out the vision of each one of the 3 divisions. In EMA, it's a disaster-ready and resilient Rockdale County. In 911, next slide, please. It's to provide a service dedicated to, backup one. It's to provide a service dedicated to supporting all public safety departments, protecting life, property, and assisting the citizens of Rockdale County. And finally, animal services is to provide a future where our citizens and government work together so that every creature is compassionately cared for and has a safe place to call home. I wanted to do those visions because every one of my divisions deals directly with the public and is there to serve them, to provide a product that they need in their time of distress. You pick a division, it's there. So with that, I want to go to point out some opportunities and challenges, which is on the next page. I'm not going to go over all of them, but in 911, big success in 2022 and hopefully moving into 2023 is we continue to have successful hiring classes. We're short 4, which is fairly good shape. We have 1 person in school fast track now who has previous experience, and we have a class of hopefully 3 coming up in September or October. So it's just a constant flow through of people, but we've got a good handle on it. We have some good people out there in the recruiting on that. In successes in EMA, we've actually early this year, Bill Kate retired. We have already onboarded a new deputy director. She has experience in EMA and with FEMA. She's actually a prior employee of Rockdale County's EMA. So I feel very fortunate. That was a big success for us to have someone that already knew us on that.
Well, Director Morgan, just for a moment, one of the other running themes I was listening to over the past 3 days, a lot of our citizens either don't know or understand the need and the necessity for a deputy director. When you talk about how your duties are broken up or split up and your responsibilities versus the deputy directors, and kind of expound on the need for why we have directors and deputy directors.
I'll be glad to. And first, it's Meredith Barnum. If you do not know her, please wave your hand, stand up. In my mind, the deputy director and the director work hand in hand. Deputy director, daily operations. The operational managers, the supervisors flow through that deputy director, and that information and that leadership flows down from there, and information flows up to the director. The director, in my mind, is the overall 30,000-foot view who gets the information from the board, from the finance, develops the budget, and then puts that information back down through the deputy director so that the director themselves don't have to get involved because there's other things that are doing. And I have 3 different divisions that I could be caught up in something. I don't want to let anything else fall off the table. So that's why that deputy director has to have a very firm grasp of the daily operations, the personnel issues, headcount. So I hope that's what you were looking for. But to me, I see that very clearly. There's a distinction and there's a cohesiveness between the 2.
Absolutely, and I think your department with the 3 separate divisions speaks very clearly to that. And one more time, I'd like for you to call out your 3 divisions and then go back to your presentation.
Yes, I have Meredith Barnum, Deputy Director. She's over all three, but she's also directly over Emergency Management, EMA. I have Maisha Calloway, who is here, who is the Operations Manager of 911, and I have C.G. Baker, who is the Operations Manager of Animal Services. And he has puppies in the car if anybody wants one.
Well, they're not in the car. They're not in the car.
No, exactly.
They're not in the car. This is a live broadcast. They're not in the car.
They're over at the shelter,
They're over
ready
at the
to go
shelter.
in the car to come over here.
Lord
Yes.
have mercy.
And I'm sure he will say something to me about that when we're done as well. Well, anyway,
Director Morgan, really quickly, could you tell everybody what exactly EMA is responsible for?
I'll be glad to. EMA is the main liaison from the county to the city and all the, essentially the public safety entities. When there is a disaster, EMA is the one that they go to get resources from the state and the feds. We also, in between disasters, we are the ones developing the plans with the county departments, with the city to say, what if? If the rivers flood, what are we going to do? We have predetermined where certain shelters are going to be, where certain animal shelters are going to be, who we're going to call if what happens. So essentially, EMA wears a planning hat about 80 to 90% of the time and hope we never have to put on our response hat. But if we do, we lead the exercises that the county and city participate in to simulate disaster response. We work with GEMA on a weekly basis. We have our own GEMA rep who actually will be here meeting with me Monday. They come out and meet with us regularly. And then we also act as the conduit of certain GEMA funds through the purposes of grants that come in to help us supply the equipment and some of the specialty stuff that EMA has to do. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
So I just might also mention that EMA is the one that kept in constant contact with our county health department and kept us abreast of all the situation in Rockdale County with our COVID-19 pandemic.
That was an eye-opening, brand-new experience for every EMA in the state and with the Department of Public Health and those local health departments, because we had worked a little bit together about, hey, are you going to help us out with a shelter if we have to open one, that type of stuff. But all of a sudden, we're on daily phone calls trying to figure out where PPE, where shots are coming from, where the testing is. I know more people at GNR now than I have ever known in my life. So it actually strengthened the EMA response pandemic relationship with Department of Public Health than we've ever had before. So I feel actually pretty good about this, about knowing where they are and they're willing to help and we're willing to help them. So that was an educational experience all on its own.
Outstanding.
Okay. The other thing that was a success in 2022, we incorporated risk management into the Emergency Management Agency. It is not directly in any one of the three divisions. The risk manager reports directly to me because of their interaction with all the other county departments, primarily talent management and finance, dealing with the risk management side. And as we increase our capacity in that area, we're actually taking on more direct risk management items. And I hope to see, when we have this discussion next year, to be able to say how much money we've either saved or brought back into the county through certain risk management strategies that we may not have been able to physically do in the past. So I'm excited about that, but that person is onboarded. They have years of experience and they literally have hit the ground running, and I've already seen great strides in risk management. So that was a huge success in my mind for EMA department for 2022. And Animal Services, as of a couple of months ago, we are now fully staffed with our allotted positions, and we're starting to expand our hours with our expanded shelter. That is both a blessing and a curse, because now we can handle more animals. And I'm going to, in about 10 minutes, I'll ask you for more people, but we'll get to that. Opportunities on this page is in 911, we're increasing our quality control functions, and we're also increasing the advanced training for staff, supervisors, managers, the leaders on the shift, the training officers on the shift. We're actually pushing them to go get more training. We've done that in 22, and I expect to continue that in 2023. In EMA, we are getting so much closer to having the outdoor weather sirens being installed. We're still dealing with the FCC and the vendor, but we're making headway every week as we finalize that. I've already talked about enhancing risk management. And let's talk about the challenges. It's still a challenge for retention for EMA in the divisions of 911 and animal services. Those are entry-level positions. We're constantly looking out for people on that. We are doing better with our longevity, retention short-term, but we're still tracking that. And the last thing, which is a challenge and part of the strategic plan, Animal Services is getting ready to kick off the feral cats or community cats, the TNR program to help control that. So you'll be hearing more about that with press releases probably in the next 30 to 60 days as we've gotten all of our ducks in a row to get that off the ground.
Director Morgan, before you move forward, I want to go back to the conversation in your presentation about retention for 911 employees. Commissioners, there were at least 30 to 60 days ago, there were two presentations on Fox 5 News, one centered around City of Atlanta 911 operations, and the other one was centered around Clayton County 911 operations, talking about the difficulty in recruiting, what is happening with police agencies and fire departments. The same thing is also happening with 911 operators and dispatchers. They're leaving one agency, going to another agency, but simply because they're chasing the highest dollar amount. We're having that same issue. We're not having it to the magnitude of some of those larger municipalities, and so that's a good thing. However, we're still dealing with retention and recruiting. The recruiting part of it is difficult, finding people who can really pass all of the criteria, meet all the standards, and then even for those folks who have met the criteria and met the standards, and we give them an opportunity of employment, they do about 2 or 3 days, or maybe a whole week, and then they say, this ain't for me. I didn't think it was all of that. I didn't know it was all of that, and they leave. Yeah. So we have that challenge. When I think about all of the citizens in Rockdale County, the one number no one wants to ever call and be placed on hold is 911. This is they are the behind the scenes heroes that nobody sees. You see the police car, you see the deputy, you see the fire truck, but you don't see the 911 dispatcher. Well, he or she is a very critical professional in the whole scope of emergency response. I'm putting that out there because just as the private sector having challenges with all the now hiring signs all over the place, so does the public sector. And I'm sure Director Holmes will be able to expound on this when she does her presentation. But just to let you know that we're faced with the same level of challenges dealing with recruitment and retention. I have probably talked to Ms. Calloway more in the last 30 days than I have in the whole time I've been around here, because I've been calling her back and forth, asking where we get excited, they get some people in, and next thing you know, that person has left because they realize that this was not for them. It's important to make sure that the three of us know and understand this kind of stuff when we're engaging the grocery store, beauty salon, barbershop, at the church, and just in passing with citizens, letting them know the challenges that sometimes, and oftentimes, they don't see.
Right. From what I understand, there's a huge mental health component to being able to work as a 911 operator, just the magnitude of the stories that you hear. Like you mentioned one time, sometimes the calls are so great that you want to get up and make something happen, and you have to be calm, and you have to direct the person to tell you what you need and all of those things. So I think it's a lot I think there's a lot that goes into the 911 operator that we don't see, and I just think that as a whole, we might have to start thinking of other incentives, like maybe, I don't know, what we can do to make the job more attractive. But I do know, I've heard sheriff's deputies caution people from taking 911 jobs because of the magnitude. Because if you think about it, a sheriff's deputy might go out on maybe 1 or 2 calls a night. That 911 operator is constantly, all night, 8 hours a shift, hearing the worst, someone in their worst condition. So I think that, I think that's part of the problem. So we need to come up with
Commissioner,
solutions.
you're absolutely right. The level of multitasking that a 911 dispatcher operator has to do, and now we have it's distinguished between an operator and a dispatcher.
Right.
And that's not how it used to be. It used to be one person doing all of that. But still having the ability to multitask where you're listening through a headset to a caller, a frantic, emotional caller, and at the same time taking that information, passing it immediately while you're listening on to the dispatcher who's sending the help. To your point, that can be stressful, a lot of mental health there. They have I think in this new facility, we're going to have you give me the proper term, but it's kind of like a stress break room or
Decompression room.
Decompression, thank you. Decompression, because when a call goes bad or south, or a dispatcher is not able to save a person through their techniques on the phone, it impacts that dispatcher, that operator. So to have that decompression, and if I'm not mistaken, I think our folks do 12-hour shifts, is that right? 12-hour shifts. We also, from an ergonomic standpoint, you cannot sit in the chair all 12 hours. We spend top dollars on the chairs. Let me stay there just for a second. This is something that the average citizen doesn't know. These chairs the 3 of us are sitting in up here, a dispatcher can't sit in this for 12 hours. There ain't no way in the world they can do that. We have ergonomic chairs that are designed to be able to, and plus I wouldn't have been able to pick the chair up like this, no way, because it's way too heavy. The point I'm making is that we spend, and I don't know, I think you need to get that. I don't know right off the top of my head the dollar amount per chair. And this chair has to be a super comfortable piece of equipment to be able to sustain that person throughout a 12-hour shift. Typical cost of a chair like that?
These chairs are called 24-hour chairs. They are rated, they have a standard, and they cost between $1,000 and $1,400 a piece.
There you have it.
And they last about 4 years max. So there is somebody in that seat 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. So it is a very heavy piece of, it's almost like their squad car. It is there, it's used all the time.
Well, I think it is that was a very good comparison to being their own squad car, because one of my last visits over to 911, they explained to me that chair belongs to that particular operator, and they have it already designed where they don't have to adjust per shift. It's adjusted for them, how they sit, how they at their console. So it's like setting the seating level in your vehicle. You got option 1, 2, and 3. The primary driver is option number 1, and it'll adjust according to that person. Now, you know you got one of them high-dollar vehicles. You know what I'm talking about. Go ahead, Director.
That also explains why we have about 3 different versions, because we want them to be comfortable and like what they're sitting in, because that's how they do their job. One more thing on 911, just on general principle, is if I was to say a thin line, fire department is red, police is blue. Does anybody know what 911 is?
Green?
Gold.
Gold.
Because it's the string that ties everything together.
Oh.
Okay.
So you'll see that in nomenclature and pictures, usually that is why in 911 their logo has a component of gold in it, because they are the thin gold line.
Well, thank you for that education piece. I never knew.
Things that you never knew.
All right.
Okay, so if we go to the next page, please. I have a couple of things that do hit in the Rockdale Strategic Plan initiatives. In infrastructure and transportation, part of that was the construction of the new 911 center, which we have officially purchased the building. Designs are being done for some small amount of renovation, and we are actually starting to purchase equipment to go in that. And if you're not sure where that's located, it's going to be located down on the south side of the county, away from Conyers and away from our current center, so that one disaster doesn't wipe everything out. And it's down on 138 South at the corner of Eastview Road.
Really quickly, I don't remember us ever going into detail for the need of the new 911 center. So could you talk about that really quickly?
Yes. This is SPLOSH funded. It's been on our radar since 2016, when the 2017 was starting to be talked about, the SPLOSH. And it is, the current center was built in the very early 90s, 91 or 92. It is a single-level stucco building that was designed when Conyers had about 50 to 55,000 people and had less than 100,000 calls a year with 3 operators. We now have 6 to 7 operators on a shift. They run almost 200,000 plus number of calls a year, and we are busting at the seams. And if we're going to take it to the next level, where it's going to be more operators to handle more calls, or next gen 911 to be able to handle, we have to have new equipment, new people, new space, and it physically cannot happen where we are.
Director Morgan, I think that was a very good question coming from Commissioner Washington. Can you take a moment and talk about what that building used to be? Because my understanding, it was not originally the 911 center. Is that correct?
The land was not. It was actually purpose-built. It's a metal frame building with stucco on the outside. But the land was part of Life for God's Stray Animals, long time ago. And the county took over that and we built it where we had land. And so it's not the optimum place for that type of building due to the lay of the land. We have made it work for the past 30 years. And the building has some age on it. You can't expand it due to how it sits on the land. And the infrastructure that supports that building can't be really upgraded, again, due to where it sits. So like I said, to take it to the next step, the next level, we had to change locations. And if that's going to be a viable emergency backup, I didn't want to build in the backyard where they both could be destroyed at the same time.
The date, the year that it was erected, the one that you're in now? How far back?
The best I can figure was 91 or 92. Is that correct? 92, and I think it was dedicated in 92.
Okay. It looks like 72, but go ahead.
It does. I had to confirm that, but yes. The other thing we have up there is on education workforce development. Part of all 3 of my divisions, part of our goal, part of our charge is to educate the community on emergency responses, how to deal with 911, how to interact with 911, and what animal services we provide. So it's an educational component. We don't sell anything. We don't come out and inspect anything. It's where the citizens need us. And so we have to educate the people of how to use the divisions.
So can I ask you a question? Yes. So do you have a educational component around 988?
We are following the state rollout on that, and yes, there is one that has been out on Facebook, and the state has rolled it out, and that really didn't start in earnest until late July or early August on that. But yes, there is one that we will be participating in.
Okay.
And also there's some internal training, because our operators now will transfer calls to 988.
Okay.
There's about 15 to 20% of the calls that they're anticipating will still come through 911 centers, as the public gets educated to dial it directly. So yes, there is an educational component, interior and exterior.
Thank you.
And then the last thing is quality of life. The biggest thing we have is with the animal shelter expansion. We're also expanding the operational hours. We are now open on Saturdays, which we have never been open on Saturdays in my recollection. And as we increase our capability, and essentially that is the human aspect of that capability, we can expand those hours and services even more. But that's a big one. And speaking of people, the next slide. This is where we are today. We currently have 4 operator positions open. Animal control or animal services is fully staffed. EMA is fully staffed. Risk management is fully staffed. 911, we have our positions. I'm asking for some, if you will notice at the bottom, the actual shift operators, the 2 day shifts have 6, and I would like to have the 2 night shifts bumped up to 6 as well, which is adding 2 positions. So the next slide shows that. Anything in green is what I am asking for, and I'll just put it out there. I'm asking for 8 people. So I'm asking for a risk management specialist to assist the risk manager, because the more we go into this, the more stuff we find we can do, and some of it is very low-hanging fruit. The 2 911 operators to flesh out all the shifts equally. And then in animal services, I need 3 people for the road and 2 people to work that expanded shelter. Because right now, the road people have to come off the road to run the shelter. That's cleaning, feeding, shots, bathing, that type of thing. The 5 people you see are part of the strategic plan that was passed 2 years ago. 2 of these people were supposed to be this year. Was not approved. And then in year 2, we were supposed to get 3 people. So that's how I came up with 5. And those are actually remunerated within the strategic plan as our planned 5-year growth for that shelter services.
And while we're there, I think I want to just break in to say this, that some of the concerns and feedback that we had heard, even this summer, even Ms. Williams' subdivision, her HOA had talked about some of the slow response from animal control and the need for a different level of customer service. We were able to talk directly with Ms. Williams, but we took the information and the concerns from she and her HOA and was able to go back and tweak a few things. And Director Morgan, you were actually there with me that day. You want to talk about some of the things that you've done internally to improve those operations and responses regarding animal control?
Yes, one of the things that I heard very clearly was weekend response. And so that's what we are doing with Saturday workers. In the past, we brought in somebody who fed the animals, cleaned the kennel, and waited for a sheriff's deputy or 911 to call to say they had an emergency. We are now open doors on Saturday. People can come there. We have full line of services. We have field people available to handle normal calls. Now, if you look at what I have 4 field officers to let people work on Saturday. That means 2 of them aren't there on Mondays. So to stretch it out with what we have, what we're proposing will make some of that permanent and make it fully staffed all the time. But we did hear them. We adjusted our hours. We rotated people internally to make that work with our services provided. We also had a little training session with 911 and the sheriff's office and the city of Conyers to let the officers know what constitutes a 2 o'clock in the morning emergency and what is not. So we can help gauge our 24-hour on-call person who has to come in with that. So it is still an educational component to the community and to first responders, law enforcement, but we are much better off than we were 6 months ago of being readily available with a phone call to the citizens directly.
And I'm going to take just one more moment to press a little further with some other additional information. If you need to call Mr. Baker up, that's fine. I think a lot of our citizens don't know when they think of animal control, they get frightened by so many different things. One of the most typical calls during around the year, particularly during the fall and the winter, fox, then snakes during the summer. And there's tons of things that, from an animal control perspective, that we, by law, cannot do. Rockdale County has a good number of coyotes, and a lot of folks, I've had people say, well, can I shoot it? Well, according to the DNR, you're not supposed to shoot that coyote or that fox. Now, if you protect yourself because you got some type of crazy wild rabbit animal that's doing something, you got to do what you got to do. But C.J. Baker, would you talk to us about some of the most common things that people call your office that sometimes they get disappointed when you have to explain to them?
And yes, CG, come on up, because there is a difference between a domesticated animal and wildlife.
And that includes cats, too, so make sure you talk about that.
And disappointed is putting it mildly.
Yes, so with animal control, it's easier probably for me to go over what we focus on versus...
CG, tell them who you are and what your role is.
CG Baker, I'm the division manager for animal services. So with animal services, we handle more of your companion animals. So your dog's running loose, or check conditions, if something is tethered or it doesn't have shelter or it needs vet care, things like that. We are, as Director Morgan mentioned, we are starting a TNR program for trap, neuter, release, or trap, neuter, return, as some people say, and that will hopefully help with our feral and community cat problem. When it comes to wildlife, it exists. You're going to have deer in your yard. You're going to have the, foxes or raccoons or squirrels. We even get calls for lizards. We do not handle things like that. That is something that we have no control over. You're just going to see them. And of course, as housing and businesses pop up and you're disturbing the land, those animals only have so many areas that they can go, and that is why you start seeing them more in your residential locations, because they're running out of space. A lot of these, those wildlife type animals or pests or rodents or whatever it may be, there are companies such as your wildlife removal companies, your private trappers, DNR, which is Department of Natural Resources, and then your general pest control companies that can try to either educate you on what you can do differently to try and prevent those animals, such as deterrence, or even simple things, leaving lids on your trash cans, not putting out, just food out in the backyard to feed these things and attract them. We do try to spend a good number of, a good bit of time educating the public when they call us, that, hey, this is not something that we handle. However, we try to give them some information and direct them, and educate them and do what we can. There are certain situations with wildlife that we do get involved with. Your dog attacks a raccoon. We need to know about that. That is a rabies control, and we are the rabies control officers for this county. Therefore, anything rabies related, we have to get involved in. If you find a bat in your house in the room that you were sleeping in, we need to know about that. You can actually be bit by a bat and never even know it. So there are some wildlife that we have to be involved in, but just deer running in your yard, fox running through the neighborhood, there's just not anything that we can do about that. A lot of these animals, even to trap them, the only way to trap them is through leg snare traps. You have to be licensed, insured. That is not something that animal control can handle. That is a private trapper.
We had a herd of cow earlier this year, from late last year, run all to the top of the spring of this year on the north side of Rockdale County. There were 7 head of cow that was running the creek line of Costley Mill Park, and they were finding their way on Dial Mill Road, Miller Bottom Road, and Highway 138. Now, can you imagine driving the north side of Highway 138 and a cow steps out in the roadway, that's a real problem. Well, animal control, they're not cowboys. That's not something they do. Now, they have a list of resources that they try to make sure they can, but if it's 2 a.m. in the morning and you got 2 or 3 cows at the intersection of Miller Bottom and 138, it's not a whole lot. It's not going to be a fast response. You can blow a horn or do something to try to get that cow out of the road. And I don't know whether that's going to, and if it's a bull, you may need to get out of the way. So there's different things I wanted, and then we had the incident last year with the cow behind John Deere on Old Covington. Yeah, that was a situation where the cow was going to hit. In fact, the last cow was headed toward Interstate 20. So it's a lot of these things that the average person don't know that we're doing behind the scenes from a safety standpoint to try to protect the general public. But at the same time, there are some requirements with us to protect those animals as well without having to just flat out kill an animal. You want to talk about any of that, CG?
We do. I mean, of course, still in Rockdale, there are a lot of livestock, we actually have a goat at the center right now.
It was blind or something.
So, we do see a lot of livestock. I mean, all over. We've had it right here in Old Town, just running down. A cow, matter of fact. So, of course, by the state guidelines, livestock actually falls under the sheriff's department, but of course they reach out to us for help because they don't really deal with animals. So we end up going out and trying to assist. But I mean, you can imagine you send me out for a bull or 20 of them. I mean, I'm one person, and you're dealing with a 1,600-pound animal. You can't just put a leash on it and hold on. It's probably not going to be a pretty picture, and our workman's comp's not going to like me. But so it's one of those that we have to. Anytime that we're dealing with something like that we can't just walk up to and handle, it takes time. It's not easy, and it takes a lot of resources, not only through us, but the Sheriff's Department, the Georgia Department of Agriculture. Sometimes we've had to call in other farmers and people that have horses that they can ride and lasso and help us.
And we've done that too. I won't prolong this. I will say that he made reference of the state ordinance, the regulation that the sheriff's office is particularly responsible for local livestock that's moving around. Well, in the sheriff's defense, to tell you the truth, the sheriff's office is not equipped to hurdle up cows. That's an old something. They need to blow the dust off of that book and rewrite that ordinance and figure out something else. The sheriff's office, they're not, they're not going to wrangle up a 1,600-pound animal or something like that. They come out to assist. They did come out. They brought drones. They try to corn off an area so that you can contain them. But the truth of it is, you get behind a bull, he'll knock the stew out of that, I almost said Crown Victoria, but Dodge Charger in a heartbeat. So I'm just putting it out there.
Yes.
That's what the state law says. That's really not applicable to today. Keep in mind that Rockdale County was once completely rural. Well, in so many of our areas, both on the south side as well as the north side, we still are very much rural. And we have a lot of livestock. And the last one is a code enforcement situation last year about chicken. We had a situation over off of Lester Road where a gentleman was raising a good number of chicken. And the folks on the other side was complaining about all these roosters crowing at the top of the morning or all through the day, and they couldn't get any rest. What will animal control be able to do or say to a rooster crowing?
So with chickens, of course, I mean, again, it's kind of a multi-department connection with this. So the first thing that we're going to do is, can they even have those chickens? So if they cannot, if they're not zoned or whatever it may be, then we're going to work with code enforcement on code enforcement actually enforcing the fact that they are not zoned, and now we have a zoning violation to get rid of those. Hopefully that takes care of the problem. Now, if they are allowed to have the chickens, then at that point, animal control would step in on the noise.
Right.
18-11 is animals creating nuisance ordinance, and that handles the noise side of things. So, and then we can work with the complainant and the owner and try to get, something resolved so that everybody's happy in the end.
How do you control the roosters? How do you?
So,
1811 is not going to stop that rooster from crowing.
Okay.
It tells that owner and gives animal control the authority along with code enforcement, say you need to find somewhere in the yard or way back across the field, maybe to put them so the sound won't be so loud. But you can move that rooster from the east to the west to the north to the south. It's going to do what a rooster does.
one of the things that we'll do is we go out, and while we're there educating about the ordinance and all that, we're checking, hey, is there a reason that this animal's making all this noise? Does it have food? Does it have access to water? Does it look healthy? If we can't find any reason other than it just being a loud rooster or dog or whatever it may be, then yes, then we're working with the owner saying, okay, you might want to move it to this, or, put it in a barn, or, if it's a dog, take it inside, or things like that. Or it may ultimately come down to needing to look for a different place that's more suitable
For the
for
poor rooster.
that chicken or
The
rooster.
rooster homeless.
Thank you for that education piece. You took us way beyond what we thought we were going to go, but I hope people were listening because, we kind of chuckled, myself included, when he talked about the fact that he get calls about lizards. But there are people who are scared to death of lizards and cats, and I understand all that. So I'm not going to laugh at the person who don't like lizards or cats.
Yes, animal control is definitely majority of us. It's education and just working with the public and educating them.
You know anybody that doesn't like
Stop.
that?
Don't do it. Don't do it. Thank you, CJ.
No problem. Thank you.
I would like to say before we go on that we are very fortunate to have someone of CG's caliber,
Yes.
his depth of knowledge.
Yes,
on this.
give him a round of applause.
Thank
We
you.
certainly do appreciate having CJ on board.
And
Absolutely.
if there was still such a thing as a Rolodex, if somebody ever found his Rolodex, they will know what the devil did he do. Somebody who has beekeepers, bat grabbers, and cow punchers all in the same Rolodex. We want to know what his job was. So anyway, he knows where we can get the help.
That's good.
And one other thing, when you've already talked to the sheriff, but I think a new method of determining how many SUVs he needs is how many goats or calves can those SUVs hold? Because we're going to, no, it's okay. All right, so next slide, please. All right, this is 911 communications, and we'll go into all the total operating expenses, but there will be what appears to be a very large change in this, but it's really not. We are combining two cost centers in this into one. In the past, we had 215, and all of a sudden the 100 budget, we are combining them together to show them in one. So it is really not $500,000 worth of changes in expenses. We'll get into the details of that. Animal Services, next slide. Animal Services has a small amount in operating expenses, $62,000. We'll get into that. Primarily, that is new services and or new software to support the services that we have. Next slide. EMA, we have a very modest increase, $25,000 in expenses in that. And there again, that is sometimes the cost of services, and we'll get into some of those. So getting down in the details, the next one, 911, the repair and maintenance, when you actually pull out all the things together, in repair and maintenance, there is $79,000, and primarily that is a new contract moving into the new building. We have to have a new maintenance contract with AT&T to provide the phone system. The one we have is approximately 7 to 8 years old. It's old enough that it can't be upgraded and it can't be moved. It can work just where it is, but we have to get a new one for the new center, and that's almost $60,000 a year in maintenance for 5 years. So the primarily increase in that is a couple of contracts that are related to the new center. The other thing you see is fuel and diesel. We now have a 911 vehicle to aid them in going to training and to be able to move operators around between the two centers if we need to, or during winter emergencies, but primarily it's to provide a vehicle to go to training. And that is brand new. We've never had one of those before. The diesel is essentially we have to have a 5th generator now for the new facility, so that takes fuel. So we still have the 4 generators at the tower sites. The new center will not have a broadcasting tower. It'll have a microwave-only tower, but it will still need to be run 24 hours a day regardless of the power setup, so it will also have a generator to run that building. So I expect our fuel costs to go up a little. And then in communications this year, and I'm not sure if the fire chief did she talk about ISO rating?
She did.
Okay, one of the things that we need for 911, and we've been putting it off until we found out where the new center was going, is right now we use a module for EMS called ProQA that codifies the questions that are asked determined upon the emergency the caller states for EMS calls only. We want to buy the other 2 modules for fire and law enforcement that will help codify the 911 response to the people's questions, what is going on. So we ask the same questions. If you have a heart attack, we're going to ask the same questions based on the answer of what you give us as it goes down through the answer tree. We need the same thing for fire, and that is one of the things that we were missing in the last ISO for 911. 911 is responsible for 10 points of the 100 for our ISO rating. We had 8.4 of 10 last time we did it. And one of the things they got us on, it was worth probably a total of a half a point or so, but when you get to ISO ratings, half a points are very important, that to have a fire protocol for handling fire calls. So when we get this, we've been putting it off for a couple of years. It is in there to purchase this year. Once we get set up, that will help us have a more consistent quality control of that type of phone call. It will also directly answer a question on the ISO report.
Director Morgan, you should know that Chief Mack did credit your leadership during your tenure for getting us the current ISO rating that we are currently have right now. So she did point that out. In fact, she said it about 3 different times. I appreciate
that. That is a big undertaking, and if you don't stay ahead of the curve, it will come back and bite a community if you lose ground.
Well, thank you.
So it's a constant fighting to keep it.
Thank you for your leadership.
Well, thank you, sir. That was one of the high points as we went from a 4 to a 3. In my career. I really enjoyed that.
Big deal.
So next slide, please. I was just going from that talked about the new Viper lease for the center at 48, the emergency backup phone system. That's $55,000 to $60,000 just out of that one line item. And I've already touched on, there's the fire ProQA modules. Next one, please. All right, Animal Services has a number of small increases in there. I want to talk about the 2 or 3 biggest ones. If you will look down close to the bottom, repair and maintenance, $15,000 increase. That is because our center is 40% bigger. It's going to take more paper towels, more cleaning solution, more mops. It's also, now that we have a new center and an old new kennel portion, an old kennel, there's certain things in the old side that we need to bring back up. That's some repair and some maintenance to bring it back up to match what we have on the other side. On the technical service, that is part of in our strategic plan, we went to a new animal records maintenance system, and that is the cloud-based service that keeps the records. Right now it's on a very old server that we maintain ourselves, and that also, as soon as we get that up and running, you will have, similar to what a fire truck or a police car has, there will be a laptop in each one of the animal control service trucks in the field that will be able to enter a call, see the next call, and go to it, and actually have part of the record of what they did already in the system, so we're not spending so much time key punching when they come back to the house. And then the last thing is gas and diesel. It's more expensive, and from last year's capital, we had 2 trucks. Given everything that's happening with vehicles, we still had not received them, so I'm anticipating having 2 more vehicles to have on the road in anticipation of being able to provide more field services. So I'm accounting for those in that fuel cost as well. Next one, please. There again, that's just what we talked about. Kennel parts, replacement, utilities are going to go up a little bit because the center is bigger. And there again, down at the technical services was the new software for records management. Those are all the requests in there, but those are the 3 biggest increases. The next one is EMA. We have a couple of small increases. The main one is the top 2, travel and education and training. This year, or for next year, for 2023, it will officially include risk management. Right, this year we sort of ate it out of our own budget. But there's a lot of stuff that the risk manager has to have training-wise, be a member of this, go to this seminar, go to this conference to maintain whatever licenses, either for insurance, risk management, purposes to keep us on the cutting edge. There's some ACCG stuff. In fact, we're in so good with ACCG, the next conference we're going to, they're funding our person to go to it, including hotel. So there's some stuff that we are making great strides, but that's the 2 big ones on there is now risk management, whether you look at supplies, gas for the risk management vehicle, or dues and fees. All of those are, EMA has very minor increases. Most of that is truly incorporating risk management into the division.
Director Morgan, Chief Cabe, I think in the future, somewhere in the near future, as we highlight the role, duties, and responsibilities of our risk management personnel, having her to come in and talk about the efficiency, the liability litigation, the legal side of risk management, and what that really means to county operations, what that ultimately means to citizens and taxpayers, having this person in place when there's incidents and accidents, and how we're able to dispatch this person out to those different incidents and accidents and make sure that our employees are following the rules and the regulations, following the policies that we have, that we govern employees by, but making sure that we're also looking out for the best interests of Rockdale County, so someone can't say that we were negligent in a particular area where we honestly were not. And if we were negligent, we can come in and address that internally and deal with training and any type of actions that we need to take going forward. There's a lot of efficiency involved in that, and I think having this role will keep us out of litigation. It will keep our people well informed and trained. And there's so many aspects of it, dealing with OSHA, whether you're driving a vehicle, operating a piece of equipment, sitting in a chair, walking across a police area inside of a building that has most recently been mopped. So all of those things are quite important. So I think going in the near future, just an exclusive PowerPoint to the public in front of the BOC would help educate. We've just got to get into that mode more and more and more for people to have a better understanding as to some of these things. Some things you can see. You can see a fire truck and a police car, but you can't see a risk management person and what they're really doing behind the scenes to take care and be the stewards, help us be the best stewards of taxpayers' dollars.
That's an excellent point. She was just hired this past November. In 2023, I would love to have, once we have 1 full year under our belts with this, that we can actually lay out what we have done, what is ongoing, and what is now for the future. That would be an excellent position, because essentially you should never see the risk manager. You should only see the effects of their work.
That's it.
And we have there again another employee with a wealth of knowledge and history that I couldn't do the job. I just don't have the skill set to do, but she does. Next one, please. We talked about that. The one thing I want to add on here, under risk management, under small equipment, you see the risk management driver check program. That is a $4,000 increase. It's the only amount of increase in the EMA small equipment. That is the driver program that would go along with our GeoTab and our defensive driving. It's the yellow sticker that says, my vehicle number is such and such, call 1-800 to see how I'm driving. That is actually a formal program, and an entity can get it for about $4,000. And she has been in jurisdictions where that has been done, the public and the private sector, and she says it actually does wonders.
Well, I'm in
And so
support of it. I am, Commissioners. I'm in support of it. She gave me an earful about 2 weeks ago, and you've seen all the trucks around, different types of trucks that says 1-800, how's my driving? I think citizens call us anyway, and I get tons of calls about employees doing this, that, or the other. Now, the thing that we have in place already, thanks to General Services and Fleet Management, we do have GPS trackers on a good number of our vehicles to monitor speed and all of those things that Director Sanders talked about earlier. However, I think there's a psychological impact or effect when you put that bumper sticker on the back of that truck that says 1-800, how's my driving? That driver knows that somebody is subject to call and report them. So I'm in favor of that.
That's why I don't have one.
Say again?
That's why I don't have one.
But it would actually make it more
We still have the
interactive.
police.
But it would make it more interactive and more direct way for the citizenry to actually let us know how we're doing, and it would fall into the programming we already have with the GPS tracking.
Yes.
Okay. The next slide, please. This is going back into those 8 positions. I'm asking for 2 operators, 3 animal control officer, that's the field officers, 2 kennel specialists, and then the risk management specialist, which is extremely important if we're going to really kick this brand new program up a notch and really see some payback for it. So those are the 8 positions, about $425,000 worth of total impact to the budget for those personnel people.
So which, you said that you had requested a couple of positions last year.
That is correct.
Which
The
were
2
those?
operators were requested last year, and 2 of the animal control officers were requested last year.
Okay.
So we work with the public to come up with a strategic plan for animal control. Were these positions a part of that,
That is
us
correct.
working
When
with?
we did the strategic plan, we had 8 people, and at the end of year 1, which was 22, we should have had 10. At the end of year 3, which is 23, we should have 13. Those 5 will take our 8 to 13 to match the plan.
And currently you have how many?
8.
Okay.
And 4 of them are in the field, plus a field supervisor, adoption coordinator, and then CG and the admin person.
Again, I'm glad that Commissioner Washington brought that up. The comprehensive strategic plan was driven by the citizenry.
Right.
Okay, and the next slide, which talks about the cost of that, what they would do, and I've already touched on all those unless somebody has a question. And then next slide. Any questions on EMA?
Commissioner Washington, any questions for the director?
No.
Commissioner Williams? Director Morgan, thank you so much. Director Lewis, who's up next?
Thank you for your time.
Talent management, technology services.
Thank you. And our final presentation of the day is Technology Services, number 4 in your guide. Technology
right.
Services. Director Margaret Moore Jackson will come present the FY23 budget for technology.
And I see that she's ready. All right, she's always ready.
Theme song, she ready.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Chairman
What number is
and
it?
everyone else joining us this afternoon.
Good
Thank you
afternoon.
all. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for the opportunity to present the fiscal year 2023 operating budget request for the Technology Services Department. Next. This is our agenda. And for the mission and the vision and the values for the Technology Services Department, our vision is to be an effective technology leader and a change agent in business, technology, and innovation for Rockdale County. Our mission is to make sure that we're working through collaboration and leadership in order to provide efficient, cost-effective information technology services which support the vision and mission of Rockdale County and those specifically stated in Envision Rockdale, the strategic plan for the time period we're in now, for the 5-year that was created by our citizens. And our value statement in the Technology Services Department is to provide the best technical support and services possible. And those values that we use in order to fully implement that, we focus on integrity. Under integrity, we hold ourselves and each other to the highest ethical standards. And under respect, we treat each other and our stakeholders with consideration, professionalism, and dignity. For excellence, we are committed to achieving the highest quality in everything we do in Technology Services Department. For collaboration and teamwork, our success lies in working together, fostering a mutually supportive environment, and knowing that with passion and vigor, together we can. Under agility, we adapt to change and innovate for growth. Under ownership, we always act ethically and in the best interest of our county and all of our stakeholders. And for execution, we understand the importance of executing a plan on schedule and, most importantly, on budget. In the area of successes, opportunities, and challenges, for some of the successes, we focus everything we do on strong collaborations with all of the components within the county, consisting of not only the departments, but also the elected offices. Success for this year has been our GIS program, which is fully staffed, 2 employees, but it's fully staffed. And we are making tremendous advancement. We're very, very happy with the team that we have. Yes, ma'am.
Because we have this opportunity to educate, and a lot of people don't know what GIS is and why it's so important to this county, would you please elaborate on that?
GIS is basically geographical information science, basically using maps and the information that we can have different layers in a map in order to make a map more interactive and more innovative and more user-friendly and more useful. Coming up, I'll show you a couple examples of some of the things that we're doing with GIS. But basically, the GIS program, basically if a citizen needs a map to show the, for example, the floodplains in an area,
Good example.
that is available. And we're going to touch on that in just a few moments of some of the examples of some of the maps that we're making available for all the citizens. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
And one of the areas that we're very proud of also is our project management structure. With this past year, we had a position filled for a project manager position in technology services. This is something that we did not have in the past, but this is a very key position. The reason why this position is so important is because the project manager basically analyzes and dissects and makes sure all of the projects, technical projects for the county moving forward, are implemented properly. In the past, the county, some of the problems that the county had when implementing projects were basically people were buying software applications and plugging it in. It's like, let's go for it. And all of the phases of a technical application life cycle, of which I will touch on, were not being addressed. And that's basically why the county was purchasing software and ending up with something that didn't work. But yet we paid for it, but because the proper implementation steps weren't followed. For example, in order to make sure that a project and an initiative is implemented properly, we need to follow the full life cycle, which is for implementation. A phase 1 will be the proper planning, preparation, and design while we are still working with the vendor, before the vendor leaves us, and before the ink completely dries on a contract, to make sure that these steps are a part of a contract moving forward. Phase 2, working with our project manager to make sure we have an implementation and deployment schedule, to make sure that someone walks through the end user with them in the implementation of the software. And phase 3, one of the most critical phases for a software project implementation, is testing and system cutover. The UAT, or the user acceptance testing, is critical, because while we are still in the early phases of a contract for project or for software adaptation, and completely before a vendor signs off and says, it's yours, you bought it, we're finished with it, we need to make sure that user acceptance testing takes place. Basically, that is a testing of the end user actually using the software to complete the tasks that they will need that software to perform in the oncoming years. It is important that this is completed on the front end, because if it is not completed on the front end, then the county ends up buying something that doesn't fulfill the goals that we really needed it for and that we spent the money on. That in and of itself would not be being good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars. That's why we focus a lot on project planning and technology services. And phase 4 of that will be our vendor end user training, to make sure they're properly trained, and then documenting everything, and then having a proper closeout with the vendor and full implementation of the product, and then we move forward to live usage of the product. And also a couple other of our successes for various county office relocations and a system for moving from one building to another. And in our service center and in technology services, we've had over 5,000 service calls completed for the county departments and the offices. Also, this has opened up some additional opportunities where we continue to full and complete integration and implementation of our software applications. And while we're doing all this, we work very closely with the finance department to make sure we have contract acceptance and verification, basically to make sure that all aspects of the contract is looked at, and make sure that we're addressing everything before we a component within the county say, that's what we want to buy and move forward with it. Also, we're moving forward with the implementation of our Information Technology Advisory Committee. This year, we've had the chance to partner with the Finance Department and make sure that we are both on the same page with this. And moving forward, we're focusing on actually implementing that. And this will help to ensure that we have economies of scale in the purchasing of all technology assets moving forward. Also, all of these are giving us the chance to expand our cybersecurity team here in the county also. And of course, with everything, there's always a few challenges. And with this, of course, there's always resistance to change. We've always done it like that. Why can't we keep doing it like that? Because the world around us is changing. So therefore, we have to adapt and move on to make sure that we are not left behind the rest of the world. And also to make sure as we continue to move forward, that we have the proper technology and safeguards in place to move forward. And also just a few of the other things, and of course with everything that we're doing as we move forward, there's always budgetary restraints. And as we're moving forward, we make sure that we're standardizing all of our technology needs to be the most cost effective. And then of course, I couldn't limit the successes to the Technology Services Department to just a third. Thank you so much.
Boy, you got a hell of a team.
I know.
You would think that was almost planned. Because on this page, I'm saying that I could not limit the successes of the Technology Services Department to just a third of the page, because the department has been so successful with, like for example, One of the things in GIS that they've completed is for the Board of Assessors, parcel information, because in the past, a lot of this information was manual, and it was taking the Board of Assessors department much longer to complete the required documents that they needed to complete. And just to touch on a few other items, the relocation of the district attorney's office, the relocations of elections and co-op extensions, and not to mention Technology Services Department did have Employee of the Year, and we're very proud of her.
Yes. Miss Deborah Jackson.
Yes, Miss Deborah Jackson, yes, sir. And also, under our area of project management, we have implemented Scrum. Glad you asked. Basically, using the Scrum method, it's a way that we increase our efficiency. For example, our project manager will go into the and meet with our different teams within Technology Services Department, and throughout the week, every single week, we'll have really quick, like 7-minute meetings, and it gives it a status, and it's a quick who, what, when, where, and how, why. And then we address what's going on with the project, what we need to move the project forward. And then the overall project itself is addressed, but the project is broken down into smaller chunks in order to make sure that the project is moving forward on a consistent basis. This is also helping us to be more efficient at all times. And another item it would be with working with the water department and the finance department and system software upgrades that we recently completed, and completing a server for the tax commission's office, and upgrading the public relations video storage system in order for them to be more successful. Next slide, please. This is just an example of some of the work, our recent successes that we've had. On the right, those of you that work for the county may recognize RockWire. RockWire is the intranet system for the county. On the left is the new and revised RockWire. What it does, it assists all departments in finding useful information that they need. And at the top of the page, you'll notice that there's sub-pages for talent management and also for technology services. And now that it is the new RockWire intranet is up and running, all of the components in the county departments and elected offices, they can have internal pages here in order to assist their employees in doing their jobs more efficiently. For example, here on the home page, we have Swift 911, which provides messages from EMA. We also have a quick access to the TSD service desk. If someone needs to put in a ticket, they need some assistance, all they have to do is click on that. It takes them right there. They can type in what they need for assistance, or if they want to submit a ticket for a maintenance request, if a door is broken in a building. And also we have on this same page, we have training that's available for all employees in Rockdale County. We have accountability training, which is the theme for this year for all Rockdale County employees, is accountabilities. And in Technology Services Department, our sub-theme for the year is Trust, Then Verify. Because we work with so many vendors, we have to make sure, yes, we trust them to do a job, but we have to go behind them and verify that they're actually giving us the deliverables that we're paying them for.
I want to slow you down there for a moment. You famous words of President Ronald Reagan: trust but verify. In fact, this week I heard during the millage rate hearing, someone referenced President Reagan, and as they're looking at all of this, the thing that I kept hearing, one of those other themes was verify. We want to make sure the trust and the verification are coupled together, as you just pointed out, because that's so important that what I like to say, the believability of our constituents, our citizens, understand that we're working in the best interest of every tax-paying citizen out there. And that's why we are doing this and talking about the deep dive of each department and those things that oftentimes they can't see on the surface, particularly Technology Services. So I just wanted to point that out, because when you said trust but verify, that was one of the things that I heard over the 3 days about verification, so that we can build that trust back into the citizens.
Thank you, sir. Also, under training resources, we have audiobooks there. So for an employee in Rockdale County would like to do a lunch and learn while they're enjoying their lunch, they can listen to educational professional development books. For example, The Secret, which the leadership team used earlier this year. The Secret, What Great Leaders Know and Do. Also, we have other training resources there, 5 Essential Leadership Skills and Extreme Ownership podcasts. And of course, we have links to the BOC, county calendars, and under talent management, of course, there's more training available for all county managers. All of this is on Rockwire, the internet for employees. The new and revised one has access to the county's payment system, and also the forms that are needed to complete all of the tasks and duties with under talent management, like the HR forms and documents, the county policies, our guides and references, our wellness letters, and under the Technology Services tab, we have our Issues of Tech Talk, which was also a success for this year. That's a newsletter that's sent out to all county employees in order to help to make sure that there's ongoing education.
Just got one last week.
Yes, sir. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. And on the last page of it, it was a link that will take you straight to Rockwire, which has an archive of all of the previous issues of Tech Talk also. And also we have Office 365 training available for all employees there. Next slide, please. This is more examples of GIS successes. At the top of the page, this is just a collage of some of the different projects that they've been working on, and that we're working with the executive leadership team in order to determine the best way to push them out. Because at the top of the page, we have an updated live feed COVID update page that's available to be pushed out. We have an interactive map for our Rockdale County parks that we have shared with the Parks and Recreation Department. In the center of the page, the citizens may recognize that. That is the QR code that was at the bottom of the programs and displayed on the ends of all of the seats during the Black History Month revival. Because the COVID count was rather high at that time, we thought people might want everything to be touch-free. So basically, if they didn't want to touch a paper program that someone else had touched, all they had to do is either in the lobby of the auditorium, scan the QR code, or at the edge of the seat, scan the QR code, and then on their mobile device, the program would actually pop up. And then there at the bottom of the page, we have the Rockdale County Open Data platform or dashboard that our GIS specialists have been working on. And this will house our Rockdale County census analysis, our Rockdale County parks map, our Rockdale County future land use maps, and also our Rockdale County zoning maps. And then the picture you see there in the bottom left-hand corner of the of our county is basically a screenshot from our War on Litter app that we used earlier this year in order to assist everyone that participated in the War on Litter, in order to make sure that initiative was a huge success.
Which is coming back, by the way, in the month of October, led by none other than Chief Jamie Cabe.
And we'll have your app ready for you. Okay. For fiscal year 23, our goals and initiatives come straight out of the Envision Rockdale strategic plan. For our first one, it is to refresh the replacement of all endpoint devices, basically replacing computers that are outdated and to make sure they continue to work. For our second one is to construct a new data center to support our county computing operations to improve security and sustainability of operations and maintain backup data center locations. For our third initiative is to implement our SharePoint system for improved workflow tools for improved efficiency. And for our fourth initiative, to launch countywide online document repository for quicker access by citizens and staff. And for our fifth and final strategic initiative is to implement business intelligence tools to enable faster project completion. Although these are listed as our fiscal year 23 goals and initiatives, since they are the items listed in Envision Rockdale Strategic Plan for Technology Services Department for the 5 years, these are the guiding principles that we work under every day. And we make sure that everything that we're doing in Technology Services Department falls underneath these 5 categories. And although I've only noted 5 strategic initiatives, we are aware in Technology Services Department that basically we have way more than this. We probably have around 100 strategic initiatives because we collaborate with all of the departments and the elected offices in the county in order to assist them to provide technical assistance in achieving all of their strategic initiatives to make sure that they're fulfilling all of their business requirements. Here we have our current organizational chart for fiscal year 2022, and we currently have 1 vacancy. And actually, when we first began the budget process, we were fully staffed. But with the great resignation and everything going on with people leaving, going to one county to another, we recently had someone to leave us. And in TSD, we are focusing on professional development and training of our employees that we have. And because prior to my arrival here, the team in Technology Services Department, they informed us that they hadn't really received formal training in 3+ years. So one thing that we did in order to address this is we meaning Deputy Director May and I, we implemented internal performance measures to make sure that everyone in Technology Services Department has 40+ hours of professional development training every fiscal year. This is prudent business practices, especially in the world of technology, in order to make sure that our employees have what we need to keep the department moving forward.
And Director, right before you, I'm so glad you talked about the need for the training, the necessity of the frequency of the training. Again, that was another one of the things that came up about training and education, which includes conferences and that kind of thing. But you've done a great job explaining that. I want to ask you to do what I've asked of Director Morgan. Give us your perspective on the importance of having a deputy director in your department.
Oh, can I put it up there with the need for oxygen? It is critical that we have a deputy director, especially in Technology Services Department, because we assist every single component in the county, meaning every single department in every single elected office. And the fact that we at any given, well, I made reference to over 5,000 service calls per year, and then we have approximately 40 projects that we're doing. And then throughout the county, there's probably 80 different software applications. In order, someone has to oversee the day-to-day operations of the entire department to make sure that the things that we're talking about here today as the strategic initiatives are actually being filtered down and permeated throughout every team member in a department, while the director is focusing on the strategic long-range planning and the liaison and collaborations of the department to make sure the department is moving forward, being the face for the department, making sure that everything, actually, if you all could just sit in Technology Services Department for a day and just see how many calls we receive, not just internally from the county, but also externally. From, of course, everyone wants to sell us everything. And thankfully, my deputy director and I, we just didn't enter into this field yesterday.
Right.
So we're aware of the different things that are out there. We've been dealing with vendors for a few decades at this point. And on an ongoing basis, we're looking at the different options or technologies for the different things we do, like, for example, the phone system. We're working closely with the water department and other departments that have call centers in order to identify a vendor as we move the county forward, because basically the contract that we have for phones now, and you'll see that on a few slides coming up, the contract has expired. But we have to identify, and this, it's not, you just can't say, I want that vendor in order to give the county a new contract. But we have to make sure that it addresses the needs of everyone in the county. Because one thing that I like to make reference to is the fact that we're one county, we have one budget, and we have one network. And by that I mean the different things that we're implementing needs to make sure that it's servicing more than one department. It needs to service as many components of the county as it can in order to make sure we're being as effective and we're stretching our tax dollars as far as we can.
Director, you did a great job with that. I want to just bring back to the attention of both of the commissioners who are very familiar with the terms smart cities and smart counties, that both at ACCG and NACO conferences all across the country, communities, municipalities are moving towards smart technology. The fact of having you all being on the cutting edge of making sure that all of your personnel are constantly going through training and refresher courses to keep us on the cutting edge of the latest, greatest technology keeps us in line with smart cities as well as smart counties. This is the type of training and leadership that we have to have in place so that Rockdale County doesn't get left behind. So many times we hear from you that we've heard from you, we think about the time that I've been here. Director Rutledge has referenced it a million times, and the two of the commissioners that you brought us out of the dark, you and your deputy director, because of where we've been. This is almost every time you talk, I almost want you to show that graphic, that picture of all those wires that was, because that thing is just resonated in my head, my spirit, and to know that you're now talking about developing a center, technology data center, thank you, that will be able to be comprehensive to the needs of all of the county and where we're trying to go. And I think a lot of times when this is why we have to do this, and this is another one of those reasons, Chief, we have to educate and inform. But I think a lot of times folks who may have been out of the workplace for a while, and if you've been out of the workplace 3 to 5 years, and sometimes even a year, you know, technology changes so drastically. I've been having a few of y'all to talk about the need and the difference of having a deputy director. Managing multiple people, managing multiple projects is so important. The one thing you didn't mention about having that deputy director, at some point, you take a vacation.
Yes, that is needed.
And you have a school-aged daughter. You may have to go to a parent-teacher conference, or you may want to go see your daughter in an event on the stage at her school. Those real-life things that a lot of times folks forget. Sometimes when they call my office and Miss Lee doesn't answer the phone, they text me, nobody's answering. I said, she might have to go pee.
She's human.
She's human. That's the point I'm making. Or she may be at lunch right now. So I think sometimes people, yes, I was very graphic, because people forget. People forget. People literally forget sometimes that we have humans working here in Rockdale County and not robots. And you have to point it out very, very graphically that way. I think when I look at the 3 young people that's part of our public relations department that just came on board here most recently, they were tuned in to all of this information. They've been educated through this whole process of learning from the various departments, and I'm sure they've been awakened to not knowing that a county government encompasses as many things. And then you took them all over the county with your presentation. I'm going to stop there. We certainly do appreciate what you and Deputy Director Jeremy has done to turn the ship around, and I think we're going to continue. This is going to be a running thing from here on out, Chief K, because we have got to constantly, Commissioner Washington, Commissioner Williams, educate our public every step along the way so people will know why, who, what, when, where, why, how, and the cost.
Thank you. Next slide, please. And true, The Technology Services Department is relatively small, and we cover a lot of area specialties. In the past, there were some employees that were basically operating in silos, and when those employees left, they left the county lacking not only in human resources, but also in technical abilities. With that, we have been working in the Technology Services Department to make sure that our team members are cross-trained and to help to eliminate silos in those skill sets. The requested reclassifications that we're asking for in the one FTE in the area of a systems analyst address increasing those skill sets, continuing to increase those skill sets that the county needs, and also the job description adjustments to more adequately reflect the work that they're already completing because of the cross-training that we're doing. This is also a key part to our succession planning in the Technology Services Department. Next slide, please. And this is just a budget summary page where actually we're going to go in more detail in the breakdown of that number in the next slide. Thank you. And as the chairman has made reference to, the world has changed a lot since the 1980s. And most of us in this room, with the exception of the young people we just hired, most of us in this room
Who
were
weren't born in the 1980s.
what was it?
I said who weren't born in the 1980s.
But the rest of us were like in school or in K through 12, and since then we've completed different degree programs and we've had multiple successful careers. But one of the main things that has changed during this time period in the world that we live in has been technology.
Oh, yeah.
It is now almost as critical as our public safety services. And I don't say that lightly, with all respect to public safety. I spent almost 30 years in that arena. But because without modern technology, our public service components, our public safety components, and all of our accounting components, for that matter, wouldn't be able to complete their jobs in an effective and efficient manner. With that, a lot of the county's technical items have been neglected for decades.
Amen.
And to remedy this, in the last few years, we've been working to bring key items up to date. And while we're doing this, we have been very mindful of the budget, and therefore we have focused only on the most critical items. Next slide, please. And this is the same dollar amount that has been carrying over for each slide. The $584,753 is the overall increase that we're asking for in the operational budget. And for that, it's mostly being broken down into the increases in the ongoing services that the county has to have, the communications, the phones, and specifically the largest chunk of this is $244,000 for the fiber lines for our data centers for the county. That in and of itself is the lifeline for the entire county, for every single component, department, and elected office. Also, a major chunk of this is the operating system that we use to run all of the computers. And basically that's $45,000 by itself. And I made reference earlier to the phone system from the county, of which we've had to renew the contract for that. And the increase in the bill moving forward is $66,000. And then also the managed service that we use for the network for the county is an increase in their bill of $35,000. And for the most part, that's the bulk of that $584,753 that we're asking for. Next slide, please. In an area of personnel requests that I've made reference to, the system analyst is the one position that we're asking for the service desk. And then the other items are reclassifications. And if we go to the next slide, we'll go into the justification for those. In the area of the system analyst and the service desk manager, The Technology Services Department provides services to all of Rockdale County government and its citizens. Our main stakeholders include approximately 1,300 end users and employees. We currently address approximately 5,000 plus service calls and tickets for customers annually, with approximately 40 plus IT projects, countless tasks and deliverables. We provide county training and other assignments and duties as assigned. A service desk manager is needed to oversee the day-to-day operations of the TSD service desk, and the reference service calls and tickets all come into the service desk, and the service desk manager is needed to triage the assigning and to facilitate the completion of the workload. And that is a reclassification of an existing position that we already have, that we're asking for that. And also one of the if we make reference back to the organizational chart, another reclass is a security analyst. We have been training one of our systems analysts in the service desk to actually sharpen their skills and improve their professional development in the area of cybersecurity. So with the addition of the cybersecurity officer that we have, we're training this employee and reclassifying a current staff member to a security analyst is what we're asking for here in order to assist the cybersecurity officer with the monitoring of the county's network for safety reasons. The last reclass that we're asking for here is a senior applications analyst. This position will also serve as the subject matter expert for key county software applications, and this reclassification is a replacement for the senior applications analyst that was moved on to become our project manager. The very last slide. Without security, there will be no business. And without the business, there will be no need for security. But here in Technology Services Department, we're working to find the medium. And with that, I would like to tell you all, thank you very much for listening to the budget request for the fiscal year 2023, operating for Technology Services Department.
Thank you so much for your presentation and responsiveness to all of our questions. Did you have any other questions?
I don't have any questions, but I will say this. When I first started in 2017, I will never forget the day that I got a call from the clerk of court who couldn't conduct the jury selection because the data center had gone down. And so when I called to inquire about it, they said it was because the wind was blowing so hard that it was knocking the systems off. And at that time, we hadn't had upgrades or any type of replacement of equipment in technology services in about 10 years. And it was when, like the chairman said, when we looked at, well, I don't know what, it looked like a mess to me. I still wouldn't know what to do with all of those wires, but to hear this presentation and to hear how far we've come in these 6.5 years, and then I can't think of one actual complaint about technology since you've been our director, and that speaks volumes because we were getting them almost every day when I first started. That was one of the biggest systems. We were offline for days,
Yes.
weeks at a time, and the work that you have done in this department is phenomenal. It shows great leadership, and I commend you for all you do. Now, I don't know if you're going to get all the money you want, but you're doing a good job.
Thank you, ma'am. We sincerely appreciate that. And if I may, and of course, we're doing everything we can to keep the technology up to date, but I would like to put a disclaimer on that. No matter how hard we work, no one can say that a network will never go down unless you completely unhook it. But what we are working to do is make sure that we have contingencies in place
Right.
in order to make sure that when and if a network does go down, that we can get it back up as
Right.
quickly as possible,
Right.
and to make sure that we have as little to none data loss as possible.
Right.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Director Lewis?
Thank you. That concludes our presentations for today. We'll resume our budget presentations tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. We have 3 scheduled presentations for tomorrow: Department of Transportation, Planning and Development, and Parks and Rec.
Okay, thank you. Were there any board comments?
No, I think I've made all of mine during the presentation.
Okay, me too. This meeting is adjourned.